Talking to Ted Seifried from Zaner Ag Hedge. Ted, how's it going?
Doing great, Shaun. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I know you're a Bears fan, as am I. My birthday
Yeah.
was last week, and my wife, you'll appreciate this. My
Yeah.
wife got me a Khalil Mack Bears hoodie.
Woohoo!
I'm ready
That's
for the
awesome. Like
season.
the on-field ones, those are really cool looking.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready for the season. We're like months away. So,
Yeah,
hey,
buddy.
Ted, MFP 2.0. Now,
Yeah.
for if everybody's not following along, this is the second round of possible direct payments to U.S. growers for trade distortion. We're
hmm
talking $2 for soybeans, 63 cents for wheat, and 4 cents for corn. First of all, what kind of impact does this have on the market?
That is a great question, Shaun. I can tell you what the market thought at 12:01 here today when that news broke. The immediate concern was that that is going to encourage a significant amount more of soybean acres. Whatever could potentially have gone to preventive plant, guys are going to get that in because we don't want to miss out on those payments. However, that is not the way that I'm reading this. And now keep in mind, this is not an announcement yet. This is a report of a rumor coming from Bloomberg, which could very well be true. But we are lacking some details, and in particular, what we don't know is how they're going to calculate payments as far as what acreage they're using, what yields they're using. And it sounds like what they're going to do is they're going to take something like Ark County, where they're going to take your 5-year average acres per crop, and then they're going to take sort of like county averages for yields. Now, if they do that, to me, that suggests that preventive plant acres would be included in that. So after letting this sort of digest, and keep in mind, we still have to hear the announcement, but from what we know right now, it sounds to me like preventive plant could be included in that. And if that is the case, rather than getting a lot more soybean acres, we could actually be looking at a little bit less soybean acres. So the market might have a completely different take on this here tomorrow.
They can't base this on 2019 planting. That would be like stubbing your toe and then like ramming it again. Like that just makes this whole situation worse. If all of a sudden we got
Yes.
this huge run into beans from an acres perspective, and
Yes.
here in Canada we're looking south and we're saying, okay, if all of a sudden there was this sudden jump in soybeans,
Yeah, we don't
that
need it.
that's going to impact our prices for canola and beans up here. Like there's a
For
lot
you
of trade
guys, for
distortion
South
happening here,
America,
Ted. Yeah.
yeah, that'd be terrible timing. And they've repeatedly said that they don't want to influence acreage, they don't want to influence markets. And we've been saying, well, how do you do that? You announce something that you're going to give payments on soybeans, and without any details, guys are going to be inclined to want to try to plant as many beans as they can for fear of missing out, right? So we need these details. We need them right now so that we can get an idea of how this is going to go. And look, I think it would be very smart of them to include PP acres or preventive plant acres in that mix as well, because then that's the only way to truly not really influence the market. Although, like I said, it might have a slight negative influence on soybean acres at that point, because if I'm looking at it, I'm looking at the price of where soybeans are versus taking preventive plant. It's right about equal right now. All this depends on what your yields are and so on and so forth. But for an average Illinois farm, it's really close to being even. Now you throw the $2 on top of it, and they're both still even, but you're not worried about missing out on opportunities so much by taking preventive plant. Whereas when the incentive to plant soybeans is that maybe there'll be a reason for soybeans to be higher at some point during the year. But if I'm getting that $2 payment, I might not want to take the risk of planting at all. I might want to just go to the preventive plant if the weather continues to be like it is right now. Again, we're talking a few weeks away yet, so we'll see. But to me, this again, if I'm reading between the lines and just kind of if it is what I think it is, this might actually not increase soybean acreage. It might actually decrease soybean acreage a little bit here.
With so many variables going on, we have poor weather.
Mm-hmm.
We have a U.S. China trade deal that looks like the sides have decided to walk away for the
Mm-hmm.
time being. We've got direct payments to growers. Uh, it's almost like with all the noise going on, it's almost like I just got to stick with what I was going to do.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I do, and I
Yeah.
think that's really not a bad idea. And I also think that, go back 10 days ago, or even 3 weeks ago, when we were saying, hey, the funds are really, really short. We don't know what the spark is going to be to get them out of their short positions, whether it's a trade deal, weather, or what have you. But if we get a 50, 60 cent rally in corn and we get a halfway decent rally in soybeans, I'm going to be selling. I'm going to have orders layered in there to make cash sales for old crop and for new crop. But it's amazing how many people change their plans when you see markets doing what we were hoping they would do at one point. And so everybody I'm talking to today, I'm struggling and I'm fighting with them. Not everybody, but most of the guys I'm talking to today, it's like, hey, get those orders back in there. Or if you pulled them, and they were 6 cents lower than where they are right now, just turn around when we get off the phone, go and make those sales. We need to use the current rally, and we need to use better prices to manage our risk. And look, if we get a pullback, we can re-own those bushels. We can use calls, we can use futures, or a number of different things we can do that have less risk of what could happen to cash to own the opportunity, right? And I'm all for owning the opportunity because I do believe that this year, more than the last couple of years, just because of the way we've gotten started, there certainly is potential for some serious strength, especially in corn. But there's also potential for serious weakness. If we come in after a 3-day holiday weekend and all of a sudden the weather forecast is completely clear, we can take this away just as quickly as we put it on. So let's manage that risk. We need to do that. We said we were going to do that. Let's stick with that plan as well.
Oh, man, well put. It doesn't matter what commodity you're with all the turmoil going on right now, any of these commodities, you need to be thinking that way. Have a plan, stick with it. You can adjust the plan, but don't vacate it completely because you're searching for an extra 50 cents on the whole lot. Absolutely great stuff, Ted. What about all the shorts in the market right now? Is it increasing? And how do you read it right now?
Well, there's a bit of a transfer of short positions, but it's been an unequal transfer of short positions, which is why we have higher prices. But the funds have been getting out of their record short positions across the board in the grain markets. Now, from what I can tell, they've gotten out of a little bit more than a third, not quite a half, of some of these short positions. And in particular, I'm looking at corn and wheat. But your producer is taking on part of that short position. Now, it hasn't been as much as I think it should be, and it hasn't been nearly as much to offset what the funds are doing. But they are getting out of the short. And the question is, particularly for corn, if they were to finish getting out of the short position, do they start to go long at some point? And that is something that's on the table. And if we're going to get into these higher price numbers that we've heard some people talk about in the markets, that's really what would need to happen. We need to see the funds start to go long. But in my opinion, for them to do that, we not only need to continue this current weather issue for another couple weeks, but we're going to also have to get into another weather issue, such as all of a sudden we get into July and it's just hot and dry, in order to get them on the long side of things, because they've been so bearish for so long and it's been working for so long. And overall, the fundamentals globally for corn are still fairly bearish unless we really know that we're wiping out a significant amount of production here in the United States. It's going to take a lot to get them long. And I don't think that they have that in their minds right now. I think if just what we've seen so far and what we will probably continue to see is them just managing their risk and managing their position. And the charts call for it. The current weather forecast calls for it. It calls for them to get out of some of the short position, and they've acted accordingly.
Hey, the last 2 years, what we've seen happen with yields, I think it's really difficult, even with how poor the weather is in certain parts of the U.S., I think it's difficult for people to start adjusting their corn yield down at this point. Is that fair?
I'm absolutely in agreement with that, Shaun. I hear the argument. I entertain the thought. I get it that late planting can cause or take the top end off of your yield potential. Also, the conditions that we're planting in right now, when we're mudding it in, that's not ideal. The cold temperatures that we've had, emergence has been slow. There's a lot of things that are coming up that are causing guys to want to try to lower that yield. But here's what I'm saying. The 176 that we're using, that is the USDA's trendline yield, it's a trendline yield. It's not our top-end yield. Our top-end yield is north of 180. So I think what we're doing is maybe taking the potential of the bigger numbers away, but I certainly don't think it's time to start lowering that 176. Now, all that being said, we are at bigger risk this year. It would be easier to come off that 176 than maybe it would have been in the last few years. So it won't take a whole lot for me to lower my yield a month from now, but I won't start to touch that yield until a month from now. Again, when guys are calling in today, I've been doing balance sheets with each one of them individually, asking them, what do you think on acreage? What do you think on yield? And here's what that balance sheet means to me based on where the USDA currently has all their demand and everything like that, but then also with the demand changes that I would make on a lower production number. And I think a lot of guys are surprised at how big these carryover numbers can be, even if we cut 4 million acres and cut 4 bushels off a yield.
Yeah.
So it's a fun exercise to do. I think everybody, in their head wants to start cutting yield, but they don't realize what that necessarily does to a balance sheet. So we got to run through that with people so they really understand it, and it gives them a much better position to make decisions from.
Well, and we got about a minute left here, Ted. But and the fact that the U.S. and China have kind of walked away from each other, at least temporarily, it's not giving a lot of optimism that hey, that market's just going to return. And up here in Canada, we're facing our own export issues to China.
Right.
Where China's just being China.
Yeah. Well, 2 quick points on that. With ASF, I'm not sure it really matters if we get business going with China again because their demand seems to be dropping on a daily basis. And secondly, the last we heard really of the trade, China was very upset about the Huawei deal, and we blacklisted them. And basically they had said that in order for them to get serious about trade talks again, they need to see a show of sincerity from the United States. And unfortunately, I don't think Trump is a show of sincerity kind of guy. So for me, this is a tabled issue for now.
Boy, I'll tell you what, has a telecom situation ever created so much havoc in an ag commodity market? I don't think so. Hey, Ted, thanks a lot.
Pleasure's mine, Shaun. You take care. I'll talk to you later.